Hi everyone, this is Coach Chappy Callanta, one of the hosts for the Fitness Faculty podcast. I am a strength and conditioning coach as well as a lecturer in the College of Human Kinetics in UP Diliman. And of course, my co-host is
Hi, I'm Valleser. I'm a full-time faculty of the Department of Sports Science in UP Diliman. I teach several courses such as basic and advanced weight training, research methods, test and measurement. I've also published several research papers based on sports, nutrition, PE, and exercise. I'm also the chairman of the research ethics committee of our college. I'm the outgoing head of high performance of the varsity
that's right.
sports program, which is going to Chappy. I'm a board member of the Sports Nutrition Association of the Philippines. I'm a former strength and conditioning coach for several team and individual sports athletes. And yeah, that's it. I'm basically a glorified gym bro.
Glorified Jim Bro is giving too little credit to wisdom. So like what he said, he's full-time faculty. I am part-time. I'm a lecturer. But we have been in an education space for many years already, formally and informally in my case. So that's why we thought this would be a good mix because we both really believe in science-backed, basically, anything science-backed. But one thing that I wanted to talk about maybe in the future episode is how we look at proof or how we look at evidence differently. Like, are we gonna look at something that's peer reviewed, like meta-analysis? Kailangan ba ganun? It has to be like that, or are anecdotal proofs actually pwede na rin? So maybe in the future episode. But for this episode, we are going to be talking about fitness myths.
Yep.
So we thought about this maybe because one of the most common things we get, diba, wisdom, when people ask us questions about fitness myths. So what's something that you've encountered before in the past?
Oh, where do we start? So very common sa Filipino belief. Right after playing sports like basketball, no, bawal maligo kasi pagod ka pa. Yeah, so mapapasok
Uh,
ka. Believed that for a long time. When I was a chubby kid, clueless about exercise, wanted to burn belly fat. So I would do abdominal exercises to burn off belly fat. Diba? What else? In the early 2000s, combined exercises and exercising on unstable surfaces was a big
mm,
thing. It was functional training. And if you were doing the conventional weight training, resistance training exercises, you were doing outdated practices. What else? The belief that in both exercise and in nutrition, if it's natural, it's better. It's not
mm,
always the case. Maybe somewhere in the early 2010s, fasted cardio, especially fasted cardio in the morning, would burn more fat. We
yeah.
believe that as well. And for the longest time, since I was a high school student, even until now, you have to stretch after you exercise to avoid DOMS. And you need to stretch before exercise to avoid injuries. So those are just some of the few myths that
Yeah.
are still ano ba, pervasive in society. So
It,
yon.
it's funny how these myths, they seem to not die. It just goes in a cycle. Like what Wisdom was telling you guys about. I've been experiencing the same myths, or have people ask me. The most common one being yung pasma, yung sinabi ni Coach Wisdom before. Like you cannot take a bath after going on a hard training session or any training session, which of course, these myths, we're gonna try our best to debunk it in a science-backed way. So something that we can show you guys some evidence on in terms of why you shouldn't believe in these myths. One of the myths that I most commonly get is spot reduction. So that's something we can talk about later on because I know that some exercises can really focus on a specific muscle group, but that doesn't mean that you're going to lose weight in that specific muscle group or lose fat in that specific muscle group. So that's something that's very common in the Filipino, not even the Filipino world, but anywhere when you go to fitness. So yeah, so we're gonna start. I guess before we continue, we wanted to share also why we thought about doing a podcast. So I reached out to Wisdom, and Wisdom actually was one of my guests before in my old podcast, and that was one of the best episodes we did. because of the amount of content and knowledge that she shared. And people don't know we're actually batchmates from college. So batch 2002 in CHK. He went on to be in the faculty while I went on to do other things. But we wanted to share really, try to help the Filipino individual when it comes to fitness.
In my case, Chappy said, let's do a podcast. So sabi ko, okay. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's a good platform because you can only I can only do so much as a teacher. Every sem, for example, in one class, you'd get 20 to 30 students, which means you can only reach about 20 to 30 students based on certain, sharing certain knowledge and certain experiences. So at least with this platform, and it's more informal. So walang curriculum. We can reach more people and we can share a bit of our experiences and our knowledge. And if people can share their takes as well, they could correct us or they can add to what we're talking about. That would be great. Diba? That's
Yes.
happy forward knowledge. We add on to what we know and we debunk some stuff, we reinforce some stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. But yes, like what Wisdom said, I think we share the same passion in trying to make the Filipino people, I guess, healthier and fitter, and trying to educate them in the best, not the best ways, but I guess for me it's the most efficient ways. I don't know about you, Wisdom, but for me it's about the most efficient ways that they can actually make themselves healthier. It's not always going to be the same thing that athletes do. A lot of these people like to copy athletes workouts or copy anything they see online, and then they experience something, the soreness right after, and then they quit. So for me it's about making fitness sustainable also for everybody. The more people, the more fitter, or the fitter the population is, I believe the better the country will be. I don't know. That's just my thought on things. So let's go ahead into our first myth. So these are common myths that we hear on our day-to-day work in fitness and also in our college. So the first myth, Wisdom, I want your take on this. So the first myth that we have here is no pain, no gain. This is one of the most common things that we hear, not only for the older population, but also now in the younger population as well. But it kind of morphed. Some people parang they look for soreness and they feel like if the workout has doesn't make them sore, it's not working. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, if it was all about soreness or no no pain, no gain, then just get into a car accident and you get the most gain, diba? So
Yeah.
yeah, but I think it's the reason is that most people would associate pain, after they train, especially if it's your first time doing those exercises or if it's your first time exercising at all. So there's a big effect of the novelty. So you
Mm.
feel sore, there's some pain even during the exercise session. So, and then you correlate that with, oh, I did something good for my body, which was exercise. And if it was your first time getting into a more active lifestyle, we have the principle called diminishing returns. So you experience or newbie gains. So you experience a quick or a rapid increase in your gains in terms of your body composition, strength levels. So the heightened level of sensitivity to muscle soreness when you start off and the rapid initial gains that you experience when you just start off, people may tend to connect those two. The
Yeah.
more you get, whenever you feel pain, you also experience progress. But that's not always the case. It's not a requirement to experience some pain during or after your training to make sure that you are going to get some gains. But pain, at least muscle soreness, is an indicator of having applied some sort of overload on your body. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a requirement as well.
Okay.
So, yep, you can
Yeah.
get some pain, but it doesn't mean that if you didn't get pain, there was no gain. So that's
Mm.
my take on it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Wisdom and I, we both teach basic and advanced weight training in the college. So this is part of the curriculum, basically. One of the things that people look for is soreness. And like what he said, that's normal, especially if you are beginning. And that's the way the body adapts, right? If the body feels a stimulus. For example, let's say 100 pounds on the bench, feels it for the first time, lifts it for 10 reps. The next time they see that or feel that stimulus, it's going to be different. The feeling will be different because there have been adaptations that would have happened. If you do your progressions properly, of course, that's another thing altogether. But yeah, stimulus will, the body will react, the body will get tired, but then the body will adapt. That's the thing that people forget. People try to parang shortcut the the process. Parang why isn't my body adapting? It takes some time to adapt. But like what Wisdom said in the start, you will see that rapid adaptation, so to speak, but then it starts to decline or diminish. But that's where proper programming comes in so that you can continue getting those gains. Right. So that's I think that's the best
Yeah,
way.
and so apart from getting into a car accident to experience pain, if it's related to exercise, there are several ways that you can experience soreness. Of course, if it's your first time exercising, even if you're just doing body weight exercises. For example, if you're doing body weight squats for the first time, just the active, parang nangyayari dynamic stretching, just the active
Mm.
movement with that full range of motion will cause some soreness in some people, no? Even with no weight at all, a very minimal weight. Um, or even if it's not your first time exercising, but if it's your first time doing that exercise, for example, that can cause novelty, and that novelty will also cause some overload into your to your body, which will cause some pain. Or if it's not your first time doing that exercise, but if it's your first time doing that exercise through a deeper range of motion, if you're really going for the eccentric loading, stretch under load, then
Yeah.
that could also cause some soreness as well. Several factors could also affect soreness, no? Nutrition, sleep,
Mm-hmm.
previous activity, and so on. But yep, I think
Yeah.
for the most part, if you did your workouts well, you experience some soreness, it's a bit of a validation that all right, you were able to overload. But if you did not feel any soreness, or if you just experience minimal soreness, that's fine as well, right?
Yeah.
So always just check your performance, not your soreness.
Correct. One of the things also is parang they say the pain is different from soreness. So don't chase the pain. Experience the soreness, but don't chase the pain. It doesn't have to be painful or uh, even hindi masaya. Dapat masaya mag-workout eh. Diba? So parang you have to really look for that feeling of, of it has to be enjoyable pa rin. You talked about nutrition. So one of the other myths that we actually also encounter is carbs are the enemy. So carbohydrates are the enemy, meaning people seem to think that if you eat in excess of carbohydrates, then you will get bigger or fatter, so to speak. What's your take on this one, Sir Wisdom?
Basic nutrition will tell us no, it's not necessarily carbs, not necessarily fats. It's really just the calorie surplus that is the enemy. If you want to lose weight, or if you want to not gain weight, then calorie surplus is the first thing that you would address. There are more details towards how to properly approach this, which a qualified nutrition coach would
Mm.
should give you advice on. But it's not necessarily carbs are the enemy, but it's the calorie surplus. Now, on a more practical side, I think they are the enemy because for the most part, compared to the other two macronutrients, on their own, carbs are the best tasting ones. Di ba?
Yeah.
Chips, cake,
Uh-uh.
pastries, compared to let's say if you have an equivalent 25 grams of carbs from chocolate cake versus 25 grams of protein from a boiled chicken breast, which is more appealing, the chicken breast, di ba? Or, fats, especially if you have carbs and fat.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, you have cake, tapos meron siyang frosting
Yeah.
or some icing or brownies with ice cream, basically fat
Alamod.
and carbs. So, di ba, they're the enemy based on controlling your appetite.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at weight management, it's really just calorie balance. It's that simple, but it's very complicated as well in how you will be able to effectively approach that problem with of weight management.
Yeah. So Coach Sir Wisdom is you are the consultant for SNAP, right? Is that true? Is it
Yeah, Sports Nutrition Association of the
yeah,
Philippines.
yeah.
So I'm basically just a decoration there. So I'm the
So there's an
sports
exercise.
science gym
Yeah,
bro. No, hindi
yeah, but
naman. But yeah, in the sports science aspect. So we have nutritionists, we have athletes, we have sports scientists in that group. So yeah.
yeah, I wanted to mention that because, as he said, we are not nutritionists. The two of us are not nutritionists. So if you are going to get your nutrition advice, the best place to go is, of course, nutritionists. We
Yep.
can share, however, what we know when it comes to the science behind nutrition. And like what he said, it's really about caloric surplus. And on the other end of the spectrum, caloric deficit if you want to lose weight. Where you get those calories, of course, that's a different story. And I can relate. It's so easy to get carbs, and carbs is everywhere, you know. So you can get it from the chips, you can get it from bread, and there's something about protein that if you consume protein, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a parang you feel full more than if you eat like let's say for example you eat 25 grams of protein compared to 25 grams of carbs. That comparison, would you be fuller with the 25 grams of protein or not?
Yeah, so there's a bit of an update on that one based on recent
Okay,
studies. Yeah, so um, if you're just looking at macronutrient to macronutrient, so make theory na protein leverage. So you do tend to feel fuller from protein if you have, or you tend to crave more protein if you have not yet reached your protein needs for that
for
day.
that day.
So there's a good study from Menno Henselmans on that one.
Oh,
But as soon as you have reached your daily protein needs, which is based on their calculation about 0.82 grams per pound body weight.
okay,
Um, Wait, sorry, per pound or per gram? Per
per
kilogram
kilogram.
body weight. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, beyond that, there does not seem to be a more
Ah,
satiating effect of protein. But
okay.
if you look at practical setting, now
You
again,
don't
not
get that.
nutritionist, but practical setting, which is, now, for example, if you, again, you go back to your chocolate cake and boiled chicken breast. If I give you 50 grams carbs that you get from a certain weight of chocolate cake based versus 50 grams protein from boiled chicken breast, now, which one is more filling or satiating?
Yeah.
Siyempre, di ba, after the 50 grams carbs of chocolate cake, medyo bitin pa. You could go for more. But for your chicken breast, which is, that's around what, 200 grams of chicken
Mm,
breast, di ba?
that's a lot.
After your first 100 grams or first, parang okay na ako dito, di ba?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it really depends on what type of carb or protein that you're comparing. But for
Uh-huh.
example, if we're looking at carbs versus carbs, if you get 50 grams of carbs from fresh cabbage versus 50 grams of carbs from a moist chocolate cake from a certain restaurant that I really like, but not sponsored. So yeah, you get 50 grams of carbs from your this specific chocolate truffle chocolate cake, and your 50 grams of carbs from this fresh cabbage. It's
Mm,
same carbs, di ba? But the fiber in the cabbage, also the
yes.
texture makes it more filling. So it's not always the case wherein protein is more satiating, but to some extent or in some scenarios, it does seem to be based on research, recent reviews. No?
Oh, that's interesting. That's again the science when it comes to exercise in nutrition science. It every day or it updates pretty frequently because a lot of people are studying this as well. So that's on carbs. So again, not all carbs are created equally. Like what wisdom said,
Yep.
you know,
Some are
carbs.
more tasty than others.
Yeah. So some will, some like I'm definitely gonna go for the cake compared to the cabbage. It's a lot of
Yep.
cabbage for 50
Yep.
grams of carbohydrates. Going back to spot reduction, one of the myths that I often get spot reduction because it's kind of intriguing because I've seen some studies where they have seen some effects, but um, it's not consistently seen throughout all the papers. But for example, if you want to spot develop, a body part. So that's different. The spot develop compared to spot reduction. So if you want to spot develop the right bicep, because I don't know, you're into you're into yung bunong braso.
Yeah.
But let's say you're a specialist, you want to work on the right bicep more. Then if you just add more volume there, science will say that you're gonna gain more on that side. But it's not the case, or is it the same case when it comes to reducing adipose tissue for a specific body part? So what's your take on that?
Yeah. So you can't spot reduce. There are some studies that would show there is some fat reduction in certain body parts when you train them, but the overall literature would say that your where you lose body fat is mainly decided by your body and also to some extent by your genetics.
Mm,
And for most of us, the last fat storage areas would be somewhere in the belly, especially in the lower belly, also somewhere in the thighs, in the back of the arms, and so on. So um, you would rarely see people who do lots of. I mean, if spot reduction was true, then you would see people who are fat all around but have six pack abs because they do lots of ab exercises,
yeah.
diba? So you can't dictate where your body loses the fat, but you can dictate where the body gains the muscle.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so that's a big difference. And you don't even need much exercise to lose fat. Just go in a poverty diet and you could lose fat. So yeah, and
Yeah.
unfortunately we can't spot reduce except if you have the budget to go on liposuction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you go towards extreme or extraneous measures like that, yeah. So again, just to reiterate, you can spot develop the muscle, but you cannot tell the body to burn fat in a specific area. Although wisdom, diba, they say that the more muscle a person has, the quote unquote, the hotter they are. But of course, that's again a systemic, parang everybody, it doesn't really mean that if you have more muscle on the bicep or more muscle on the trunk, that means you're going to burn more there.
Yep.
It's just a
Yeah.
total body temperature. So yeah, again, don't expect to lose belly weight or belly fat by simply doing hundreds of crunches. Don't.
Yeah. And if you will notice, most people will have similar fat storage patterns, diba? You'd rarely see a person with fat forearms
Hmm.
and a lean and have lean waist, diba?
Okay. Yeah,
So
yeah,
most of us would have leaner forearms, leaner, let's say, calf and lower leg. Then more fat would be stored maybe in the back of the arms,
yeah,
the love handles, the belly. So they say there's a evolutionary reason for that one. Why your body stores most fat somewhere around your torso, maybe for survival, for
yeah,
thermal regulation, and so on. But yep, you can't gain. You can't dictate where your body loses fat, but you can dictate where your body gains muscle. And no, common sense lang din, no? Common sense. If you do arm exercises, you get a bigger arm.
yeah.
You do leg extensions, you get bigger quads or bigger thighs. So if you do abdominal exercises, you get what?
You can
Bigger
abdominal.
abdominal muscles.
Yeah.
And if you think about the fact that the muscles lie underneath the fat and skin layer, so by gaining more muscle in your abdominals,
You're gonna protrude.
you get a larger waistline.
Uh,
So so if you do lots of abdominal exercises, you develop your abdominal muscles, but you don't necessarily burn the fat around that one.
body
So
fat.
to some extent, if you're doing uh, compound free weight exercises, don't, and if you want a smaller waistline, don't do abdominal exercises.
Hmm.
Kung aesthetics yung habol mo, kasi you just end up pushing forward
Pushing for fat
the
forward.
fat. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
But that's gonna segue us to the next myth because you mentioned it already. Do we need to exercise to lose weight? Diba? So parang we as gym bros, we prescribe exercise, we promote exercise. But it's not always the case that if you exercise, you will actually lose poundage when you step on the scale. It might affect your body composition, but it might not right away or might not at all affect the poundage that you see or the number that you see on the weighing scale. So why is that?
It's because of the simple fact that calories are much easier to consume than to burn. Diba? So when we said if you want to lose weight, the main driver of that one should be a calorie deficit, which means you eat less, you consume less calories than what you use for your daily activities, such as doing your chores, doing exercise, doing your work. Um, but the fact is, it's much easier to eat your calories compared to exercise it off. Now, for
Mm.
example, it's impossible to burn off 600 calories in 4 minutes.
We've been
Diba?
hearing that for so long.
99.9% of people would say it's impossible, diba? But
Only one
it's
person says
much easier, it's much easier to eat 400 calories, 600 calories in 4 minutes.
it.
So, which is why um, technically you don't need to exercise if you want to lose weight. You just go on a calorie deficit with
Yeah.
whatever diet approach that you would like, and you end up losing. We see this all the time, diba? With tito, tita, friends who went on a certain diet and then
Mm.
they lose weight even if they don't exercise. But
Yeah.
the advantage of exercising is, number one, it's a healthy habit. It's a healthy habit to exercise. Number two, you burn some extra calories from exercise, especially if you do resistance training. Okay, you build muscle mass, and muscle mass burns calories even if you're just staying alive, diba?
Yeah.
Because muscle mass takes energy to maintain,
Mm.
right? So those your bodily processes just to keep your muscle mass in you, it takes energy. So it's good to exercise because it's healthy. Also because muscle building muscle mass um, takes energy even if you're not doing anything. The extra energy that you spend in the gym is also using helping with your calorie deficit,
Yes.
and you also end up looking better after you lose weight, after you
Mhm.
lose fat. Because if you just lose weight by dieting, yes, it's very much possible, but you just become a smaller version of yourself. That's what happens.
Yeah.
But if you do exercise, for example, if you do weight training, as you lose weight, you increase your muscle tone because your muscle definition starts to be more apparent
Mm.
because there's not much fat covering the skeletal muscles. So you look better as you're losing weight. So both are important for weight loss, especially resistance training. But if you were just to choose one, then definitely the best bet is to just diet for
Uh-huh.
weight loss.
Yeah.
But if you have discipline to do so, diet and exercise.
Okay.
If you haven't done both and you want to lose weight, one of those is a better way to start with. Pero siguro sa ibang episode na lang. And I would say start with exercise first, and there's a reason for that one, and then diet later on. But
Okay. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a future
second
episode.
episode, yeah.
Yeah, but that's a bigger thing we need to unpack. But yeah, so again, you heard it here. You can definitely lose weight just by working on your caloric deficit. But would you want that? So that's why we prescribe or we promote exercise, not merely to lose weight. Because if you, and although a lot of people go to the gym or start exercising because they want to lose weight, the first thing I tell them is, well, it's not going to work if you're not in a diet or in a caloric deficit. It might work, but it's going to take a longer time than what you would have in mind. So, yes, definitely think about what you eat and also go into exercise in with a different goal. I guess parang it's not just to lose weight. It's really like what Wisdom said: be healthier, look stronger, look better as well. But
Yeah, yeah. To add on that one as well, no. Also you have 24 hours per day. Exercise gets your mind off of your appetite, diba? While you're exercising, you forget about being hungry. So you gain what 2 or 3 hours not thinking about food, right? So when you're exercising, not only is it good for you, also not thinking about eating, diba?
tama yun. Kasi ano yun eh, exercise, we call it ano, a keystone habit. in our industry. Parang if you start exercise, it kind of like snowballs into more healthier living. But we'll talk about that in a future episode. But going back to that, because some people naman, they feel, especially women, when they start doing resistance training, it will make them look quote unquote bulky. That's another myth that I wanted to talk about. Is that true? Will lifting make you look bulky? But let's try to because I don't think this is a problem when it comes to men. I mean, most men are fine with it, but this is really an issue when it comes to women. I believe so. So what is that? What is your take on this? Is it true? Will if you lift weights, will you look bulky?
Well, you just look at gyms all around the country. How
Hmm.
many bulky women do you see, diba? Barely any.
Yeah.
Because number one, they have much lower testosterone concentration, so they can't gain as much muscle mass compared to men, same rate. What else? Women talk about some women talk about fearing gaining muscle mass, but what do they want? They want toned thighs. They want
Don't.
a
Yeah.
bigger butt. They want broader shoulders, toned waistline. That's muscle. That's muscle you're talking about. You don't get that just by doing cardio. Diba? So
Okay.
it's and again, how many bulky women do you really see?
Yeah.
It was that easy to be bulky. Then we should be seeing a lot more men who are big and bulky. But here I am, 20 years later, still trying to be big and bulky. Diba? It's
it takes a lot of volume
yep.
to be able to achieve that. I mean, look at the Olympics. You see people in the weightlifting event, for example. That's a good example of people who gain some mass, but they undergo a lot of volume when it comes to lifting. Somebody who goes to the gym 3 times a week to work on their physique, it's not gonna happen. That you're not gonna look like a bodybuilder. It's gonna take a long time for that to happen, especially if you're a woman. So don't be afraid of that. Actually, you'll look even toner because of the muscle mass that you will be developing when you start lifting.
Mhm.
And then you mentioned it that that's another thing that women like, or not naman women, all people who want to lose weight, they turn to cardio. So
Yep.
cardio, that's another myth that I hear. More cardio means more fat loss. So does that equate? But if you look at your weekly routine, let's just say you go on a 3 day a week resistance training program 3 times a week. Then you say, okay, I'm gonna do cardio twice a week or even 3 times a week because I want to lose more weight. Is that the way to do it? That balanced approach, or do you skew towards more cardio compared to resistance training in order to lose fat? Or is there even a thing? Or is that even a thing?
Yeah. So two different issues there. No? So if it's in lose fat, um, it's always which approach is more sustainable. And again, the calorie deficit based on a calorie restricted diet is the number one priority.
Hmm.
Now as you're trying to lose weight, you also increase the risk of muscle loss when you're doing lots of cardio, and especially if you're in a calorie deficit. So it's important to do resistance training as well, and not as much cardio. But it really depends on the person. Some people just don't care much about trying to look their best. They just want to lose weight, and that's fine as well. On a holistic approach, you should be doing, cardiovascular exercise, and so aerobic exercise and anaerobic exercise to have the holistic approach to your fitness.
Hmm.
So it's not just about looking good, it's also about having a healthy cardiovascular system. And then if you were going to introduce weight loss, then go on a more calorie restricted diet.
Okay.
But right, and then just continue with your aerobic and anaerobic
Yeah.
activities. Right? But if you were just to choose one, you were going to choose just one, then maybe resistance training is
Hmm.
better, because you do because of my biases. Yeah, because because you do tend to preserve your muscle mass if better if you are going to go on resistance training as opposed to cardio, especially if you're on a calorie deficit. But the best approach is to do both
A mixture
because
of
it's
both.
better for your health. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. But yes, I also agree not because of my biases, but because I've seen if you do resistance training, you do get your heart rate up. And if you're trying to go into cardiovascular or aerobic training to because ano yun eh, we are in the tech in this tech revolution. But you look at your watch, you say, oh, I'm only burning this much calories, or you look at your Fitbit, you look at your I should have mentioned that brand, but if you look at a certain your smartwatch, and then it says you're only burning 250 calories in your weightlifting session, and then you compare it to a cardiovascular session, it's not apples to oranges, so to speak. It's not as if one is to one, because when you do resistance training, it goes beyond that session only. It goes even beyond that session, the effect that you get.
Yeah, so that's you were referring to EPOC,
Yeah.
excess post exercise oxygen consumption. So your recovery, your physiological recovery from resistance training takes also on a lot of energy,
Yeah.
right? Also, ganito siya eh. If you think about gaining 10 pounds of muscle, diba? And that's an extra what? A few hundred calories you burn every day
Because of the
just by staying alive.
mm,
Diba? That's a lot. Na if you
yeah.
look at 250 calories on the cardio machine, ano ba yung 250 calories na yan, diba? That's not a lot.
Yeah.
Two small packs of a certain very delicious cheese corn chips is going to cost you 280 calories.
Okay.
Take you what 5 minutes to consume. So it's not a lot. So if you should be in it for the long run. No? Gain muscle, have discipline with your food choices, do cardio for health, and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I know a theme is emerging here that we the more muscle, of course there's a limit to it, but if you can pack on muscle generally, and I've seen recent studies in this, but if the more muscle mass you have as you age, it's been tied to longevity. It's been tied to yeah, living longer basically. That might be twofold. One fold might be you are actually more stable. So one of the risks for death when you get older is that you fall, so a risk of falling. And when you're stronger, you lessen that risk for falling. And secondly, I guess it's the muscle mass. If you have more muscle mass, again, generally people are healthier and they live longer. No?
Yep, yep. Especially if the older population, the number one cause of injuries in the elderly, so 60 years old and up, is falling
Mm.
and then injuring themselves, hip fracture, and so on. And the number one reason why they fall is because of loss of balance. The number
Oh.
one reason for losing balance is loss of strength. And the number one reason for loss of strength is loss of uh, physical activity.
Mm.
So the argument can be actually made that exercise, specifically resistance training, is more important for the elderly because if you're young, or 30 years old and younger, even if you don't exercise, you're naturally going to be physically fit than the elderly population. But when you get old, that's when things are going to be a bit dangerous if you're weak and fragile. Diba? And also, the elderly who have higher muscle mass, it's also an indicator that they are physically active,
Mm.
which is why they will tend to have longer lives because it means they have been physically active up to that point, and they also have better quality of life. No,
Yes.
so there's a difference between living long and having a good quality of life because the elderly who are physically active have better quality of life, which means they need less assistance doing their daily chores. They don't have to worry about keeping up with their children and grandchildren when they're walking in the mall. They
Yeah.
don't have to be scared about going up and downstairs. They don't have to worry about going on a vacation and being a burden to the rest of their family.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your quality of life is also affected if you grow old and you're physically active. Yep. And we actually published a study around 5 years ago,
Okay.
introduced resistance training to elderly women. Absolutely no background in weight training. So 60, 65 years old. They gained strength, they gained functional mobility. There's a
Wow.
test called the timed up and go. So yeah, it's never too late to start, and there's never a good reason to stop resistance training. So yeah,
That's
quality of life talaga, quality of life.
yeah. Inadvertently, we also answered one myth that weightlifting or resistance training can be dangerous, so to speak, or parang it might be risky, especially when you get older. In fact, when you get older, you should be more consistent with your resistance training. And of course, intensity is relative naman. It's not doesn't mean that you're gonna be lifting the same things that you were lifting when you're in 20s, but being able to push your body towards or near that, near that limit, it's gonna be good to keep your body adapting and basically trying to be strong for the rest of your life, which is a good thing to do. Yeah. So one thing that we also want to talk about, we talked about it you talked about it in the intro, is do we need to stretch after an exercise or even a sports bout? Or let's just put it first in the exercise. Let's say resistance training. Nag-weight sila. They went on a weight training routine. Do they need to stretch afterwards in order to recover?
Yeah, so the quick answer is no. Based on studies, so static stretching, no. So static stretching has not been shown to significantly reduce muscle soreness or biophysical markers of recovery compared to not stretching. So you don't need to stretch after exercise if you are going to go for optimum recovery. What's more important is that you get good rest after you exercise, you have good nutrition, good sleep. Stretching is not necessary because if you had a hard enough workout, regardless if you stretch or not after, you will experience some soreness,
Yeah.
right? But on the other hand, stretching is relaxing. So
Okay.
it does help you stretch after you squat or stretch your chest after you do bench press. You know, relaxing reduces. So stretching is relaxing. If it helps reduce your stress, it promotes your recovery, at least mentally, then go for it. But if you don't feel like stretching after your training, then you don't have to stretch. But you do need a basic understanding of human anatomy to understand how to stretch a muscle. Right?
Okay.
And also, it's a good skill to have in case of cramps. If your chest cramps, you know how to stretch it. If your quad cramps, if your hamstrings cramp up, your calves cramp up, um, a basic understanding of anatomy would help you relieve those cramps. And again, stretching is relaxing, but you don't need to do it if your main purpose is recovery.
So the effect is mostly psychosomatic in that sense, or even just psychological when it comes to the recovery aspect of it.
Yeah, yeah, to some extent it is. Of course, if a muscle is tensing up and then you stretch it, it relaxes. So that could help you out as well. But to say that you need to stretch after exercise to promote recovery, it's
It's not true.
in general, it's not true.
Okay.
You need to rest, practice proper nutrition, get enough sleep, and have a good training program.
What about let's flow into cool down, because you hear that term all the time, cooling down after a workout or even a game. Is there a practical, first of all, a practical reason to cool down? And then secondly, is there a scientific reason to cool down? Because those two might be different. What do you think about it?
So it really depends on what your definition of cool down is. So if you're talking about cooling down, which is heart rate goes down, your muscles relax, your breathing goes back to normal, your body does that naturally.
There.
So as soon as you stop training or you stop your activity, you can just stop and you're fine. There's no need to do stretching. There's no need to do light jogging.
Okay.
Cool down mo, di ba? So you try to cool down. Ba't ka tatakbo? Cool down if you're running. But to some extent, it is quite uncomfortable. For example, if you were doing some interval sprints, and then you
Okay.
just sit down, heart rate is up, your breathing is at a higher rate, tapos you're just sitting down, it might feel uncomfortable. So you just walk
Yeah.
or do a light jog, that's fine. But it's not necessary to cool down. So the best way to cool down is just to rest and sit down, and that's it. That's how your body will cool down on its own. Ba? Wala
Okay.
ka pa naman nakita na hindi siya nag-cool down. So, yung heart rate
Iba na
niya
yun.
pa rin.
You
After
have to
the
take that.
work, nakaupo na siya, tapos pataas pa rin yung heart rate, tapos yung, kasi hindi siya nag-cool down.
Uh,
Practical example is, if you look at middle distance and long distance, middle distance running in the Olympic, what do they do after they reach the finish line?
they sit down or
Sit down, lie down, di ba?
uh,
Wala namang pupunta na medic, uy, stand up, you have to cool down.
yeah, yeah.
Because they just want to stop moving and catch their breath and let their heart rate go down. They're just naturally going to do that. So it's not necessary to do anything to help your body cool down or recover. It will do everything on its own naturally.
It's great. This isn't on the list, but this is my pet peeve, wisdom. Because I was involved in sports and you were involved in sports. And whenever a coach sees anybody hunched down, basically in that recovery position when your hands are on their knees, well, I know their hands are on their knees. Some coaches will go to them, then stand up. Don't tayo kayo, wag kayong pakita. Don't show that you're tired. Although I get that when it comes to the psyche of it, na parang you're telling your opponent that, oh, hindi ako pagod, I'm not tired. But I also know for a fact that that's the most optimal recovery position when it comes to trying to catch your breath. Let's try to explain that. So why is it more optimal to have your hands on your knees while you're standing up to recover and to try and catch your breath? What happens to our airways?
Yeah. So if you look at the anatomy of your diaphragm, your rib cage, and it has your lungs are inside, diba? Your lungs do not necessarily expand. Your rib cage expands, thereby creating a vacuum. So your lungs, it's not a muscle, so they can't move on their own. So if you're hunched down, all right,
Okay.
you're it's much easier for your rib cage to expand, thereby bringing in more air as opposed to if you're standing up.
Mm,
You're breathing, so it's easier to if you know the diaphragmatic breathing. It's easier to bring air in if you're breathing through your belly as opposed to just expanding your chest.
your
Kasi
chest.
mas malaki yung volume eh.
Yeah.
It's actually much easier to catch your breath by taking in more oxygen by hunched down, hands on your knees,
Mm.
and taking deep breaths as opposed to just standing up. Now, we see this phenomenon of also saying na, hindi, don't show that you're tired, especially in combat sports. Especially in combat sports na, yes, but you don't want to show that you're tired, so you don't want to hunch down.
Uh,
But if you're more recovered after, then
yeah, exactly.
their ass afterwards, diba? We
Yeah.
actually did a study on that one. Compared standing with your hands over your head,
Yes.
hands on your knees, sitting down, and then lying down with your feet up.
Okay.
So lying down with your feet up
The
is the
best.
fastest way to recover, but it's not the most practical way. In
Yeah.
most instances, if you can sit down, sit down. But if you're standing up, then hunch down. If you
Okay.
can lie down, then lie down. So example would be after doing, let's say, squats of 10 repetitions that are 1 to 2 reps from, let's say, 1 to 0 reps from failure. So
Oh
medyo
wow.
maximum
We
output.
got. Mm.
After you rack the after you rack the bar, lie down and then put your feet up on the leg pins and then just recover. So
Okay.
yep.
That's top. I think I saw that for in the Olympics, some of the people in the weightlifting competition, after when the camera was backstage, some of them were like lying down, trying to recover, trying to relax. And to the uninformed person or individual, that might look like weakness. But again, let me reiterate, it's not weakness. This is my pet peeve because I wisdom. But when I hear coaches say, look up, or stand up, you're not facilitating proper breathing or proper oxygen consumption in that position. That's why the body goes into that position almost automatically or almost involuntarily. you hunch down because you try to get more air, and that's what the body was designed to do. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means that you need more air so that you can perform once the whistle blows and it's time to play again. So again, if you're a coach or if you're a sports coach and you're listening, it's not a sign of weakness. Stop it with that. Stop saying that, and let your athletes recover properly. Yeah. So rant.
Another pet peeve din talking about coaches. Bawal uminom.
Isa pa yun. Okay, sige.
Inom-inom.
I don't think we need to
Inom
spend a
tubig.
lot of time there.
Okay.
Water is important.
For
Yeah.
what? For what, di ba?
Oo.
Mental fitness. And if you think about the fact that, let's say, basketball, in actual games, you can drink even in between dead balls, di ba? So,
Yeah.
why can't you drink during practice, di ba? For what? For toughness, di ba?
I was a high school player in the late 90s, and that was very common. But no water break until you finish your planting rice within 25 seconds. And it was, I don't know if it built my mental toughness, but it did build my anger towards running and towards that drill. So it might be different, but I don't think that's a good way to go about it. All right. So the next myth that we have here, now this might be counterintuitive to discuss because we are both in the industry, and like me, for example, I am a personal trainer. I know wisdom handles some people, although mostly in the academia siya. But do we actually need to hire a personal trainer to get good results? So, short of saying, are we even necessary at this point to get good results?
Okay. So you can answer that, Chappy. Do they need to hire you?
So actually, yeah, one of the things that I am very cognizant about is AI. You can just ask basically ChatGPT or any AI tool, be very good at describing yourself, describing where you live, describing your routine, describing your goals, and everything else. And sometimes ChatGPT can churn out a program for you that if you read it, and I've read it, this actually makes sense. I mean, I would give this program to somebody in this scenario. So in that's where AI comes into play, in my opinion. And we're not even talking about Zoom, YouTube workouts or TikTok workouts or IG workouts that I think are not good because they are designed to entice you to watch it. It's not really designed for you specifically. So actually, if I'm to weigh the two, I would go more AI compared to YouTube. But where do we lie? The personal trainers lie. So there's still a human component to training. What I tell my clients, and they know this, parang they can always go to online just to check, is those days that you don't feel like working out, those days that you have struggle, you struggle to to get up to go to the gym. That's where your personal trainer comes in. Short of saying we motivate you, but not naman as a motivator, but also the human component of working out. A lot of people still want to be coached, quote unquote, by an actual person. So the coaching dynamic of it can give a difference. Aside from that, you have to adapt. So you have to continuously adapt and progress your workouts. So in that sense, it needs a human eye to see if you are ready to progress and to assess if you are ready to progress. So if that's the case, then again, that's the coach. That's where the coach comes in and tells you it's time to progress. I can see that this is easy for you. We can agree, and then it's time to progress. So it's okay to start, I guess, a routine online or through a workout that you see online, but how do you progress that workout? And how do you continually work out? That's going to be the difference. What's your opinion on it?
Quick answer. Do you need a personal trainer to get the best results? For most of us, no.
Yeah.
That's a quick answer, di ba?
Uh,
Um, Simply because you can try to learn things on your own and then apply it to yourself. So in my case, I've never had a personal trainer,
yeah.
but I've been reading about this stuff for more than 20 years, diba? Now, but the fact is I'm not a competitive athlete and I don't compete in anything, and I've gathered a decent amount of knowledge to be able to train myself with, with siguro mostly good information. All right. But do you really need a personal trainer? It depends on some people. If you're a high level athlete, so sports, even physique athlete, or if you're a, let's say, celebrity, um, the personal trainer saves you time,
Hmm.
saves you time.
Yeah.
Because you can try to learn all this stuff on your own. It might take you a few weeks, months, or years trying to filter the information, or you just hire someone who already knows this stuff and implement it to your own life. That is assuming that you get a good trainer. So it's
That's a different story.
when we're talking about the state of the fitness industry,
Yeah.
regulating it, professionalizing it. But a personal trainer gives you the advantage of time. You don't have to think about what is the best blank and blank. Should I blank or blank? Do I start with blank or blank? Your personal trainer, assuming that he or she is a knowledgeable one, will already implement onto your program the best approach.
Hmm.
The personal trainer saves you time and energy and mistakes,
Yeah.
which means time is gold. If you have the gold, you buy your time, diba?
Yes.
Especially if you're a high level athlete, or if you're someone you're an actor, diba? Even the best athletes, diba? Look at Hidilyn Diaz. She
Hmm.
has a trainer, she has a coach. Look at the best bodybuilders. They have a trainer, they have a coach. Because it's also important to have a more objective
Yeah.
third person point of view. Because if you are just training yourself, that's good enough to some extent. But if you want optimal results in comparison to your competition, you need a different set of eyes to tell you, wait, this is what we do, this might be a better option, or let's just keep doing this. Diba?
Yes.
But if you're just someone who wants to be fit, healthy, you don't want to pay for a personal trainer, then you have to pay with your time and energy.
Hmm.
Study what you need to know, implement it onto yourself, and then train yourself. So you don't need a personal trainer to get good results, but you will need to spend the time and energy. If you have the money, right, and the trust, then go get a good personal trainer, because in almost all instances, it's always better to have a personal trainer than not. And I even know some people, no, na mga 10 years na nag-workout, they can't work out without a personal trainer.
Yeah.
They're used to being instructed, which is, in my opinion, it's good for the trainer. Meron siyang constant income stream, but it's not sustainable because we're talking about no lifetime health and fitness. So at some point, you should be able to be more independent.
Uh,
So you will get better results if you have a good personal trainer or not. But if you just want good results and you're not a competitive athlete and you just want to be fit and healthy, then you don't need a trainer. But you do need to spend
learn.
time and energy to learn all this stuff.
That's a great perspective to go about it. I'm looking at because I am an active personal trainer, but my the way this is gonna be I guess for a different episode, but the way I structured my business because it's a business is that I get to train the people who really like it really need it or really invest in it. Uh, but then I have a different arm in the business where I train people all around the world online. Parang I design workouts for them. So it's a different, I guess, level of engagement that I give, but it depends really on the person. There are a lot of factors to it, and I guess that's going to be a future episode because marami sa mga listeners or people who actually commented in our post are trainers and they're looking for what would be a good strategy to make a living. So, wag kayo ma-turn off. Sabi namin hindi kailangan ng personal trainer. Pero kailangan pa rin naman talaga. We definitely believe that there's a place for us in this industry. Now, speaking about that and prescribing exercises, are there like must-do exercises? When you look at your Bible of exercises, wisdom, parang Are there certain exercises that you are confident na anybody should do, or anybody should be able to do a specific variation of that particular exercise?
Yeah, so we see this a lot with tawag dito, modality bias.
Okay.
People with a powerlifting background would have a modality bias towards, kailangan mo mag-bench, mag-squat, mag-deadlift. Some people with a weightlifting background would have a modality bias towards, you have to learn how to power clean and
Mm.
to press. Some people with a modality bias towards body weight suspension training would have bias towards, they will start with, suspension training, inverted rows, and so on. But again, it really depends. If you're just in it for fitness, for general well-being, there are no required exercises. You don't need to squat, a barbell back squat. You don't need to do a bench press, barbell bent row. If you're just in this for health and fitness, because there are a lot of things that will dictate your exercise selection. Number
Okay.
one is equipment availability.
Yeah.
Right? What
Wala
type of
natin yan.
squat? How do you squat? So
Yeah.
some people will try to, di ba, put it on the floor, lift it, put it on their back, and they squat.
Likad.
There's no way that you're overloading your legs with a weight that you can carry off the floor and put overhead and put on your back, di ba? So number one is exercise selection. Number two is personal preferences. Some people just don't like doing certain exercises. So if you're just in it for general health, fitness, looking better, there are no required exercises, but there are fundamental movements that you should be able
Ah,
to do. Now, there are differences with the different approaches, especially if you're looking at biomechanical factors. But in most cases, you should be doing some exercises that are based on a squat movement, a hip hinge movement, vertical push, vertical pull, horizontal push, and a horizontal pull. So you have 6 basic movements that if you do, you're basically targeting all of your whole body. Now, if you
yeah.
want to do some isolation exercises, that's fine as well. But if you do just those 6 different movements, then you're good to go. So whether you do your squat based on barbell back squat or a goblet squat or a leg press, and whether if you're going to do a bilateral or a unilateral version of that exercise, machine or free weight version, if you're going to do your hip hinge with let's say Romanian deadlift, all right, or a good mornings, it doesn't matter much. Your body doesn't really care much about what version of the exercise you're doing. What your body detects is the movement. And whether you're doing bilateral or unilateral versions, machine or free weight versions, your body is moving the same way. So I would say there are some required or highly recommended movements, but there are no required exercises
Yeah.
unless you're a specific type of athlete. For example, if you're a power lifter,
Of course.
no way that, di ba? You don't do squats, bench, or deadlift. If you're a weightlifter, there's no way that you don't do some form of cleans or snatches.
Hmm.
But there's no required exercises for most people, but there are some highly recommended movements to get the best full body approach to your
Yeah.
resistance training. Yeah.
I first read about, I'm not sure if it's the first, if he was the first one to use it, but Robert Dos Remedios back in 2010, he had a book. I forgot the title, but he basically wrote about those categories, no? Squat, hinge, push pull, both vertical and horizontal plane. And ever since then, I've been doing, it's been like that. And I'm sure even before he mentioned that people kind of figured it out. But if you squat and you hinge, you push and you pull, you basically get your whole body. And of course, there's the isolation exercises. So yes, I agree. There's not parang you need to program a squat, you need to program a hinge. It's not necessarily for all people. There are individual differences that need to be addressed. There might be some things that you need to work on based on some problems in your chain or whatever. But it's not like a one size fits all approach, I guess. And you mentioned already, this is going to be our last myth. does the body is the body biased or towards free weights compared to machines? Parang is there a more superior way to I guess lift? Are machines first of all safer than free weights? And then second of all, are machines more effective than free weights?
Yeah, so when we're talking about effective, they can be just as effective as one another when you're talking about muscle gain or strength gain, because strength gain is exercise specific. So to gain the most strength in the chest press machine,
Mm-hmm.
specificity will tell us that you train with the chest press. To gain the strength in the bench press, do the bench press. In general, though, the body does not really care much about what type of implement you're using, machine or free weight, but what it does care about is where the angle of the resistance is.
Ah,
Now, what they do say is that free weights, especially free weights that involve standing up, squatting, overhead pressing, also helps develop your stability and your balance. So maybe there are some applications where that's good. So athletes, for example, that's a good application to have free weight exercises. Free weights are definitely safer if you think about it. Let's say if you fail on the bench press, you
mm.
might die. It has happened.
Yeah,
Now, if you look at the same horizontal movement, if you fail on the chest press, what happens?
you
You
just
just
yeah
bring on the bar and then you're fine. Same thing with if you fail on the squat, you might break your neck. That's happened. Someone has died.
yeah
If you fail on the leg press, you just stop
yeah.
and step on.
Mm.
So uh, definitely machines are safer. Um, Free weights are going to help develop your balance and stability better. Machines are better for teaching the movement to beginners.
Yeah.
Free weights are more versatile. If you have a barbell, basically dozens of exercises that you can do with that one. If you have a leg press machine, you basically can
Yeah.
only do a leg press. So machines are more expensive. Free weights are cheaper and more versatile, as I've said. Um, so it really depends on your circumstances. There is some instances, so we go into a bit of programming now, wherein it's good to have a combination of machines and free weights. For example, squats are very taxing on axial loading. So
Yeah.
when you're basically compressing your spine, it's more fatiguing. So for example, if you would like to put on more volume for your squatting exercises, because you want that, if you want that really thick lower body. Kita mo yung mga cyclists
Yeah. Sa
it's
Olympics.
basically two different people, top and bottom, lower body and upper body. So
Yeah.
it the actual loading might be difficult when it comes to just might bring in more fatigue.
Yes.
You're just going to rely on squats. So you can do, let's say, if you wanted to put on more volume with your squatting pattern, squats, let's say 4 sets, your back is tired, your posterior chain is tired, sit on the leg press, your upper body is basically resting, and then
Rested.
you keep doing your squat movement, so your muscles are still working, but not as much axial loading. So it really depends on the circumstance, on the goals. There are certain instances where machines are better, certain instances wherein free weights are better. If you have the resources, a combination of both will be good. We had Brad Schoenfeld last year.
Yeah.
Said a good combination of multi-joint and single joint exercises would be good. And then if you want to put in more volume, the less fatigue that machines bring in could be a good way to add in more volume for the same movement. So if you have a good trainer, your trainer will tell you which one is better under certain circumstances.
Yeah. That's where the truth.
Add one, either or lang, then definitely free weights. Free
Free
weights.
weights. Yeah. I
You have
agree.
a lot of dumbbells, and you're fine for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I agree. When my clients ask me what to buy when it comes to their home gym, keep it simple. I mean, you just need your dumbbells. Just make sure that you can, progress in weight. So if they have those adjustable dumbbells now, I guess goes up to 50. That can work. Yeah, space saver. Um, maybe a bench, or not even. Sometimes you don't even need a bench, but it's good to have a bench. And that's it. You can have a full workout already with that. Not to say that machines are evil or unnecessary, but there's a time and place and a budget for it. If you have the budget for it and if you have the space for it, then why not? Go ahead. The body will not care where the resistance comes from. As long as there's resistance, then it's going to adapt. Yeah. You also
Yep.
meant, yeah, go ahead.
Ito lang din, yeah. Also, it depends on the type of exercise combinations that you do. So, for example, if you do a Romanian deadlift with a barbell, so it's very taxing on your posterior chain. Then you would like to do a barbell bent row for your upper body pulling, a horizontal pulling exercises.
Okay.
Your lower back or your posture
Certainly.
might give out because you did squats and RDLs, and then now you're doing
Head over.
barbell back rows. So if you will instead transfer to the, let's say, if you have a good chest supported row machine, then you will be able, your back will not be a limiting factor to doing your movements. So it really depends on the circumstances and of course the combination and the order of exercises and your training split. And that is why you need, changing my answer, that is why you need a personal trainer.
Yeah.
Nagbago yung sagot eh.
That's with science, our opinion changes from day to day. But definitely, yeah, that's one thing that a trainer will provide for you. It might sound obvious to the both of us, but to a lot of people, they might, oh, let's just do a pull because we already did this, so we can do a pull. But what kind of pull are you gonna do? Have you, if you know functional anatomy and how the muscles work and where the muscles are positioned, then you know what muscles were taxed during a particular exercise and what muscles you can load more in that particular routine. So again, that takes, the knowledge of a good personal trainer. So we go back there. No, you still need a personal trainer. Yun yung answer natin. Okay, so that does it for the first episode of the Fitness Faculty Podcast. Again, if you want to follow us, we are on Instagram. Just follow Fitness Faculty Pod, Fitness Faculty Pod on Instagram. You can also email us if you have any questions you want us to tackle something in our future episode. You can email us at fitnessfacultypod@gmail.com. So both Instagram and Gmail or email is the same, Fitness Faculty Pod. So that's on Instagram and on Gmail, Fitness Faculty pod@gmail.com. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Fitness Faculty PH. Just search for the Fitness Faculty on YouTube, and we will be there, of course, with all of the episodes and all of the shorts that we will produce from the show. Okay. So again, hope that you can give us a follow, like us, thumbs up. You know what the kids do these days, say these days, follow us. Maybe we'll be on TikTok. We don't know. Papasayawin natin si Coach Wisdom. Well, let's see. But this was fun, Wisdom. Do you have anything to end with?
Yeah, so just make sure that at the end of the day, the most important thing is to have big chest, big biceps, and big calves. Just so with fitness, a lot of these things are not confusing. It's really simple, but just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. So
Hmm.
that's what we're here for.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. We are here to help you guys in your fitness journey, your wellness journey. And again, if you have any comments, put it on the comment section below. And if you have any questions, if you have any myths that you want us to debunk, you can put it in the comment section below. And we will see you guys next time on the Fitness Faculty Podcast. Bye, guys.